at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. The 49ers have cut to 53, and we're going to go through all of it. Plus, 16-man practice squad will be revealed. Did they get everyone they wanted? I'm Anthony Robertson, and here with me is the horse, Alex Horse. What's up, Horsey?
Yeah, they didn't keep everyone I wanted.
Also here, Alex Sesania. What's up, Alex?
Nothing much, man. Super excited. No real big surprises, but let's dive into this thing and look at it.
All right, let's get into it. So the quarterback position, the 49ers kept, of course, Jimmy G, Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Mullins, and C.J. Beathard, which some people didn't know if they were going to keep him, but he's a Shanahan guy, so that was kind of implied. Was that a surprise to you guys that they kept C.J. Beathard?
If it wasn't the year with the limited offseason and the COVID situation, I think he would have had more trouble making the roster. But I think you kind of have to keep three quarterbacks in this situation because if someone goes down, he's one play away from being in the game. So I think you kind of had to keep three this year. He knows the offense. He's been in the program for, what is his fourth year? So they're going to have a third quarterback. He's probably the best guy for it.
Agreed. I think the big thing with it is I thought maybe we could get him on the practice squad and just you activate him in an emergency situation if you absolutely need him. But it doesn't surprise me that we kept him. I know it's not a big fan favorite. There's a lot of people who aren't huge on the idea of C.J. Beathard and just what he's been able to do or not been able to do as a San Francisco 49ers quarterback. I think this is probably it for him, though, in terms of being on the roster. COVID really saved his job. I think going forward after the season, probably not going to be the guy making the roster in future seasons, let's say.
I thought they were going to try to sneak him onto the practice squad, but keeping him on the roster, not a huge surprise. I mean, George Kittle's best friend, so there's that dynamic. Plus, he's one of Kyle's guys, and Kyle likes him. He has starting experience, so there's a lot of that goes with it. So yeah, keep those three guys together. They've been in the same room for a few years now. Might as well keep it together and see what happens moving forward.
So at running back, they kept 5 if you include Kyle Juszczyk at fullback. They also kept Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, and Jeff Wilson Jr. Any surprises there, Alex?
No, I don't think any of them are shocking. Pretty much every single guy here. I think the only discussion we had really had on the podcast and the only one that came up a lot was whether or not someone like JaMycal Hasty was going to beat out Jeff Wilson. We all kind of thought there was potential for it, but due to COVID, it's just not likely to happen. None of those guys surprise us. None of them shock me personally. You got your kind of go-to short yardage guy in Tevin, early downs. Raheem Mostert's going to spell in, most likely, kind of your big play, big bang back that you're looking for. Jet is going to be used in a variety of different ways. I think as the season progresses, if he stays healthy, he's going to have a lot bigger role later on rather than early on. Jeff Wilson is going to be that third down back when we need a guy who can come out of the backfield and make some plays and run some routes, catch some balls. He's probably going to be, we saw him a lot last year as a red zone guy, especially middle of the season. He's probably going to be the red zone guy going forward for a majority of this year. And then Juszczyk is Juszczyk. If Kyle Juszczyk didn't make the roster, that would have been the biggest surprise of surprises. So these are the 5 that we thought was going to be. I think this was the consensus 5 for pretty much everybody that's a 49er fan or anyone that knows anything about football, period, at all.
The real question was whether they were going to be able to keep the fourth tailback, fourth running back, or they were going to have to eliminate one because they were trying to keep, the third quarterback with C.J. Beathard or an extra wide receiver, and they ended up finding a way to make it work so they could keep Jeff Wilson Jr. on the team, which is good. I like the camaraderie between those 4 guys. I think they all add different aspects and are different, but yet very good backs. The one thing I will say is that hopefully Mostert is better pass blocking this year, but I think that Jet and Tevin are good at that. So they'll really show out on those type of things. So no, it wasn't a surprise. This is pretty much exactly what we said on the Project 53. All of us thought this was going to be the running back group, so there was no surprise for me.
Yeah, the only question was a little bit of Wilson versus Hasty. I know a lot of people brought that up. Jeff Wilson's just a reliable guy that's played a lot of time, is why they would keep him over Hasty. I think the other three guys are going to see the most time on the field. I do think Wilson's touches will actually go down this year, because when they went up was because Shanahan lost faith a little bit in Matt Breida. Now that he has Jet in that spot, unless there are injuries in there, I don't think Wilson will get the ball too much unless there's a blowout situation. But he's a core special teams guy. He's a very reliable player. He's going to go in and do his job, and that's why he beats out a rookie in that situation.
Receiver position, they kept 6. Those 6 were Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Kendrick Bourne, Trent Taylor, Dante Pettis, and Richie James Jr. The guys that didn't make the cut for the 49ers were Juwan Jennings, Sean Poindexter, River Craycraft, and Kevin White. Anthony, how you feeling about the 6 that they kept and the guys that they cut?
I like the 6 that they kept. I was a little surprised that Richie James was available. I had kind of thought that he was going to start the season on the on the NFI list because of the injury. Shanahan had kind of said in some of the interviews that he wouldn't be ready, but he is ready. So that's good news. I think on the Project 53 we weren't so sure about him being there, but he is. So that made sense for them to keep these guys. These guys have all been there besides Ayuk for a while now. They all know the system inside and out, so they can do whatever Kyle wants them to do. Juwan Jennings, I think, was the guy I thought was going to make the team. I'm still high on Juwan Jennings, and I think that he could still be something for the 49ers in the future. But for right now, these 6 guys, it works. It made it so they could keep other people at other positions. So, do what you got to do.
I think this was the position that was the most debatable due to injuries and all the different veterans they brought into camp, from Tavon Austin to J.J. Nelson to Kevin White, and then they spent a draft pick on Juwan Jennings. But had they been healthy all through camp, these are the probably 6 guys that any rational person would have picked. I don't think a lot of people thought that Richie James was going to be ready for the beginning of the season. I was a little shocked by that, because there hadn't been many reports saying he was getting close to being ready. And all of a sudden, boom, he puts up a picture of himself in the uniform on Instagram, activated the next day. I know there was some debate to Deebo being ready. He's ready, apparently. You knew Ayuk was going to make the team. They spent a first-round draft pick on him. And the rest of them, I don't think there's any surprises. They're all guys that we expected to make the roster.
That's kind of the feeling I got to. The one that shocked me too, and like you had said, was Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings, I thought, had a legitimate shot once Jalen Hurd went down. This makes you wonder too what might have been had Jalen Hurd stayed healthy, because it really looks like they wanted to keep Richie James. By the fact that they're going to activate him and put him on the 53-man, would they have actually kept 7 if Hurd is healthy? Do they stick with 6 and one of these guys is gone and not here? Is the next question that comes to my mind. So I think a guy like C.J. Beathard benefited from the Jalen Hurd injury. I think we all thought it was going to be someone like Juwan Jennings, and it actually ended up being a guy like C.J. So crazy to think what could have been had Jalen Hurd stayed healthy. He's not. These are the 6 we're rolling with. These are the 6 I think we're all pretty much comfortable with. I think the only one that was surprising was Richie James being actually activated and on the PUP list to start. Juwan Jennings being off the active 53 to start the year. But I like the group. If they're all healthy, if Deebo can be back in a couple of weeks here into the season, if Brandon's ready to go week 1, I'm really excited to see what this group is gonna do going forward here.
So the 49ers kept 4 tight ends. They kept George Kittle, Jordan Reed, Ross Dwelley, and Charlie Warner. Horst, does this surprise you that they kept 4 tight ends?
It does, but at the same time, when you think about it, it does not, because Kittle and Reed were locks unless something was wrong with Reed's health, which he's clearly showed he's back to his old level of performance in camp. Dwelley is a guy I know they really like. He played well last year when he was needed. He's a young guy. The one that some people were debating was whether Warner would end up on the practice squad. I think someone would have took him. if they would have cut him. And I believe that from what we've heard that Werner's cross-training to play a little fullback. So I think he's going to be a guy that can move around to different spots. He's obviously going to have to play all the special teams. I'm still a little surprised to see 4 guys at tight end. That's a lot. But it makes sense to me because those back 2 are 2 guys you don't want to lose.
Yeah, and the big thing for me is based on just everything we had been hearing about Warner from guys like Kittle, the stuff we had been hearing about a guy like Jordan Reed, and the fact that I think the consensus is that Ross Dwelley is a very talented individual. We all saw glimpses last year of the talent level and what he can do on the field. He's not a bona fide number 2, but he's not far off. And he can do a lot of things within the offense, and we've seen that he functions within the offense. He's not going to function as well as Jordan Reed will, but he's going to function at a high level. So letting a guy like him go, or even trying to sneak him onto the practice squad, it is not worth the risk. You got to find a way to keep him on that active roster. And Charlie Warner is seeming like it's going to be being mentored and groomed essentially by George Kittle to be the next big thing going forward. He's probably a guy that we're all hoping, or at least the coaching staff is looking at and hoping is going to be basically Kittle version 2, or mini Kittle here in the next year or so, or even 2 years. If he's that in 2 years, you can part ways with a guy like Ross Dwelley if Charlie Warner is the future of the position after George. And you got your 2 guys that you're going to build your franchise around at the tight end position for a while until it becomes obvious that either Kittle is starting to deplete as he gets up with age and as he plays more and more snaps, or if a guy like Warner is growing at a rate that you can no longer viably hold on to top-end tight ends and you have to move them. So I'm excited about the possibility of 4. I wouldn't say it surprised me. I think if there was a position where we were going to keep a little extra at, it was going to be this position, because it seems like we were drafting it well and we've hit on it, and it looks like we have.
0 surprise for me. In Project 53, I said we were going to keep 4 tight ends. I saw this coming, and I think this is part of the reason that Jawan Jennings is gone, because now Kittle and Jordan Reed are the power slot. So they change what they're going to be doing with those 2 guys. I think it's funny Kittle said 4 tight ends on the field at once. I don't think he's far off. I think you could do this, and I think you could have a lot of fun with those guys. Those guys can do so many different things. So having those guys all on the team together, it's big, and it's going to make some matchup problems for the 49ers, because Jordan Reed and George Kittle can still win in space. And so them being covered by even cornerbacks, there's a size problem. Being covered by safeties, there's a speed problem. These guys are legit number 1 tight ends, and we have 2 of them. And then we have a really good blocker with Warner. And then Dwelley is blossoming into a very good tight end. So yeah, this is a good group. I like it. I'm curious of the possibilities of what's going to happen. And I think we're going to see a big season from Jordan Reed. I think he's going to be the one that stands out. And then the development for Charlie Warner is something I'm going to keep an eye on. Friday, we're going to take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah! Bring you 49ers content like you've never seen on YouTube before.
Oh, yes.
All the football content with a little comedy mixed in, too.
Yeah.
We're going to bring you everything you need to know about 49ers vs. Cardinals Week 1.
Woo! Week 1, yes! Friday, 5:30 p.m., boys. Be there.
Be there.
So, for the offensive line, the 49ers kept 8 guys, and then Weston Richburg was put on the PUP list. They kept Trent Williams, Mike McGlinchey, Laken Tomlinson, Daniel Brunskill, Tom Compton, Colton McKivitz, Ben Garland, and Justin School. William Sweet, Jared Jones-Smith, Ross Reynolds, Kofi Amichia, Dakota Shepley, and Ronis Grasu were released. Alex, any surprises on that?
Not a one. Not a one surprise at all. We had been saying this since the start. Project 53, we were pretty much all in agreement on all of this. We all pretty much said Western Richburger was going to start on the PUP list. We all said the guys below that got cut, Sweet, Smith, Reynolds, Amici, Shepley and Grassu were all not going to be on the roster. Grassu, we were all kind of surprised. We had even picked up because we all thought if it was going to be anybody, we would go after a guy like Daniel Kilgore. So none of those moves surprised me. They're all gone. We're rolling into the season with Williams, Tomlinson, Garland, Brunskill, and McGlinchey starting at the O-line. The other guys are going to be rotating in. We'll get hopefully Weston Richburg back around week 7. Go from there.
I thought there was a couple of things that were interesting. Number one, they never brought in another center. You know, we had mentioned Daniel Kilgore. Kilgore made the 53-man roster for Kansas City, so congratulations to him. He can still play. Some other things were Tom Compton taking a pay cut, cutting $1 million off of his number. I think it definitely signaled that he's going to be the backup to Daniel Brunskill at guard, and Ben Garland will be ready to go week 1. So those are big things to look at. I think they're also freeing up money for Trent Williams, which is a good sign. That means he's full-fledged Trent Williams again, one of the top tackles in the league. Overall, it's a really solid group, and I think Richburg will be the 9th guy when they add, and they'll just remove somebody else. I think they will keep all 9 guys once he comes off the PUP list. But it's a solid group. It could be a top 5 group. Hopefully they gel and play well together. I don't think they have any worries about Brunskill. I think he's an improvement over last year. So, yeah, the offensive line, solid this year.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. The only question that comes up is what happens when Richburg gets brought in off the PUP list. I mean, I don't think it's a question that he gets his starting job back. I think it's a question of who gets released, and I actually totally agree with you that they're going to release someone from somewhere else. I think they keep all 9 of these guys because I don't think McKivitz makes it to your practice squad. I think Tom Compton's a really good reserve player, so you don't want to lose him. And Ben Garland's obviously proven to be a really good reserve player, as has Justin School. So they're all guys you don't want to lose. So I think they make the release somewhere else on the roster when Weston Richburg is ready to go.
Now we get to the D-line. This is something we all feel is an important piece of this 49ers team. They kept 9. Nick Bosa, D. Ford, Kerry Hyder, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, the biggest man in the world, DJ Jones, Solomon Thomas, Kentavious Street, and Kevin Givens. They cut Darian Daniels, Alex Barrett, Cameron Malveaux, and Dion Jordan on the PUP list to start the year off. Ronald Blair III and Julian Taylor. Anthony, what are we thinking about the D-line?
I think it went pretty close to what we expected. I think the ones that stuck out to me that made the team were Kentavious Street, and I think that I'm glad he made the team. It means he's finally healthy and being able to play at a high level, which is very good because he has a lot of upside. And so I'm with it as long as he's healthy. Yeah, he can add some major depth in the interior defensive line. And Kevin Givens, I know, was always considered kind of a fringe guy and an undrafted free agent that they signed. But him making the team just shows how well he's playing. They went ahead and decided to move on from a couple of guys, especially like a Dion Jordan, that didn't make the roster. And he was one that I thought would because he kind of gave some versatility. But if Kevin Givens is playing on that kind of a level, then we definitely are good inside. I like the defensive line overall. I still think it's the strongest unit on the entire team, even with the loss of Buckner. I think that another year, some of the versatility from Kerry Hyder, Javon Kinlaw, I think he's going to add some versatility because he can play the nose tackle spot as well. So I like the defensive line overall.
I think the only thing here, once again, that's interesting is when those guys come off the PUP list, what's going to happen. I'm not surprised at the 9 they kept outside of Givens, like you said. I also had Dion Jordan making the team over Givens. It's probably a good sign, though, for the Niners' coaching and development that Givens is outplaying Dion Jordan because he spent last year on their practice squad. Ronald Blair, I think, is a guarantee to end up back on the team if he's ready to go. So, honestly, that might be Givens' spot, unfortunately. The interesting battle to me is if Julian Taylor's healthy, does he get Kentavious Street's spot? Because I know they're super high on Kentavious Street. I would not be shocked to see Julian Taylor stashed on IR because I think they like both those guys. And they're struggling on who to keep between them. And unfortunately, Street was healthy, Taylor wasn't. So for him, that's bad news.
Do you guys think there's any way that if Richburg gets active, one of these 9 comes off the roster.
No, I would say that if he becomes active, more than likely someone like a Flanagan Foles at linebacker would probably be the first guy that I would see getting cut, and then maybe a safety position like Marcel Harris, or possibly. I know we're kind of getting into the guys that are on the roster, but I think that those would be the first two guys that I could see. Even a CJ Beathard at that point, you're looking at possibly during the season more easily being able to sneak him onto the practice squad. So I think those are kind of the three guys that I would look at.
Yeah, that was my big thing with this, was when I saw the 9 number, I kept thinking to myself, is there any way whatsoever that one of these 9, if you bring a guy like Weston Richburg back, are they going to be there still? Will they still be active? And I think the answer is yes. I think some of them are there because they're there as placeholders for guys like Blair and Taylor when they get back and are healthy, potentially.
Yeah, the 9 seems to be the number they like.
Yeah, they like that number a lot. It gives them and provides them a lot of versatility. They're able to mix and match guys in different positions, give different looks, line guys up in different spots. Ant, you talk about that all the time. Horst, you've brought that up plenty of times as well. They like to mix where they start guys and what they can do with them in there. And if you have 9, that gives you a lot of different options and choices. I think the 9 number there is what it'll end up being for sure, no matter what. It's just a matter of what pieces are there once guys like Ronald Blair and Julian Taylor are ready to go from the PUP list.
So now it's time for the Hot Boys. They kept Quan Alexander, Dre Greenlaw, Aziz Al-Shaair, Mark Nzocha, Demetrius Flanagan Foles, and the guys who got cut were Joe Walker and Evan Foster, and then on the reserve COVID-19 list is Fred Warner. They only kept 52 on the roster, so I completely expect Fred Warner will be activated before week 1, hopefully. I think that's their hope. So, Horst, what do you think about the 49ers keeping 6 linebackers?
Well, the Hot Boys feel a little mild without Fred Warner on them because that would be scary to line up the first game without Fred Warner. I'm a little shocked that they kept Flanagan Foles. Joe Walker is a veteran guy that's played a lot of football. He's renowned as a great special teams player. So Flanagan Foles must have had a fantastic camp. I don't know much about him, to be totally honest. I'm not shocked at anyone else that they kept. Fred Warner, like you said, is clearly on the path to being back, or else they wouldn't have only kept 52 players. I'm pretty shocked that Demetrius Flanagan Foles made the team. No disrespect to him. We can't watch preseason games. We can't watch practice. I'm sure he showed up and showed out. But it's just a name that I don't think was on anybody's radar to make the team.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. No point did I think that he was going to make the roster. There was no inkling of it. You never really heard anything big about his production value. Granted, you didn't hear anything really about Evan Foster or Joe Walker either, but I think we all pretty much were on the same page that Walker, most likely just because he's been around and been in part of the system a little bit longer, had the edge there. So congratulations to Flanagan Foles. That's a big accomplishment. That's a stout linebacking core, and the fact that you're going to be a part of it, and you're a building block essentially for that unit and that group. I hope that we don't have to throw you into the fire quickly this season. I hope you have some time to get acclimated and get your feet wet, just because no preseason games, no way for you to really rep anything or get comfortable with the speed of the game. But congratulations. Hopefully Fred Warner is back in time for week 1, and the Hot Boys can get off to a hot start.
Question for you, Ant, before you. So who starts in Fred Warner's place if he doesn't play week 1? Are we assuming Al-Shaair?
Quan.
No, but I mean, who's the third backer when they run a 3-backer set? Would it be
It's got to be Al-Shaair or Mark Nzocha.
I figure, right, because Flanagan Foles has to be the last guy because he's...
Yeah, I think Flanagan Foles is going to add on the special teams. I think the intent is for him to be some sort of a special teams player. I think Nzocha and Al-Shaair will be the third, the possible fourth guy. I was surprised they kept 6. I thought they were going to keep 5. I thought the decision was always between whether it was going to be Joe Walker or Mark Nzocha, and I honestly thought they were going to go with Joe Walker just because of the special teams, but Nzocha must have beat him out, and that's great for us. I think seeing Flanagan Foles and Al-Shaair on the roster shows the development that these coaches are getting out of these guys that are undrafted, and they're making players out of them, and they're pretty good linebackers. So I'm interested to see what Flanagan Foles can do. I think we're just going to see him on special teams at first, but maybe he can develop into something else. He's also somebody I see as a possible roster move later on that will, be gone and then possibly onto the practice squad. But I like the group. I think it's the strongest linebacking core in the NFL.
Oh, yeah. So at the cornerback position, the 49ers kept 5. They kept Richard Sherman, Emmanuel Mosley, K'Wan Williams, Ahkello Witherspoon, and Jason Verrett. They released Jamar Taylor, Tim Harris, and Dante Johnson. What do you think about it?
I am surprised only because this was the position I was thinking personally that there's the most uncertainty with your Mosley, Ahkello Witherspoon, Verrett tandem. And so I had us keeping like 7, I believe. I had us keeping 2 more. Tim Harris getting cut shocked me. But it shocked me in a good way because I think what it signals is that Jason Verrett is the real deal. He's the real deal and healthy and looking great, and they are confident with him as a guy in the secondary. Whether that means he's the starter, I don't think that means he's the starter. I know there were rumblings about maybe a Witherspoon trade, a Ahkello Witherspoon trade, which if that were the case, I think that would signal to the fact that they are really excited about Jason Verrett. Nothing came to fruition with that. That's a nothing burger at this point in time. So I think it just means they are comfortable with Jason Verrett on the field, with what he can bring and provide to the team, and that he completely shores up the cornerback position for the coaching staff. Like Jason Verrett in their mind that's all we needed. He is that now. He's the guy that we're going to be relying on in different situations and in different scenarios. So they didn't need to keep Jamar Taylor. You didn't need to keep a Tim Harris. You can get rid of Dante Johnson, and you got your 5. That freed up some space to keep some extra D linemen, to keep a guy like Flanagan Foles on the roster, made some room for the emergency quarterback in C.J. Beathard. I like the move. I'm super excited for what it could potentially mean for that secondary.
Yeah, it didn't surprise me a whole lot. I really thought these were the guys that gave us the most versatility at the position, with the guys being able to play outside and inside. And just the length of Ahkello Witherspoon is still something that the 49ers covet. And I like Ahkello Witherspoon's matchup that he could possibly have with DK Metcalf. I still think if he got stronger, that's still a good matchup for us. But I don't think he's going to play as much as he did last year. But really, when you think about that, that means the defensive back position has improved. Jason Verrett is a definite possible Pro Bowler. I mean, he's just a solid player, and I like that he can play inside and out, and he's going to be a stud for the 49ers. I know he's got the little bit of a hamstring issue right now, so we might not see him week 1. But down the road, these guys together, all of them playing in different spots, I think they're going to do some fun stuff, some more man-to-man stuff. And when they do some man-to-man stuff, you might see different guys than Sherman at left corner. But now we have a solid backup at the right corner spot and a solid backup at the left corner spot. So this is the best group I think they've had in the last few years.
Yeah, even though the names are similar, I think this group is greatly improved. Mosley had a great end of the year last year, and I think he's only going to improve on it. Must have had a good camp because it's pretty clear by all the indications that he's starting opposite Sherman. It's great to see Jason Verrett make it through, mostly healthy enough to be on the roster. Ahkello's another, like you said, he's got a ton of potential, and if he ever unlocks it, he could become a shutdown corner in this league. He's just got to be more consistent and probably a little bit mentally and physically stronger. Then K'Wan Williams is one of the best, probably 3 or 4 slot corners in the league. He's locked down over there. You guys all know how much I like him. I think it's a great group. I'm a little surprised they didn't keep 6, but the 5 they kept is a good group.
So with that being said, now we talked about our cornerbacks. Now we got our safeties, the guys behind them, making sure they don't get burned deep when we're running our nice cover 3 sets. Jimmy Ward, Jaquiski Tart, Tavares Moore, Marcel Harris made the roster. We ended up cutting Jonathan Cyprien and Jared Maiden. Ant, anyone there surprise you, or are we thinking business as usual?
I thought this was the group they were going to go with, but I thought Cyprien was definitely pushing Marcel Harris for that spot. I didn't think Maiden was going to make the roster, even though I like Maiden a lot because of his versatility, being able to play free safety and in the slot. And I think that's why he's someone that they actually still like. But Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tart are the bona fide starters. They're on their way to try to hopefully become Pro Bowlers this year and take that next step. And I think Tart's going to be motivated by the fact that he wants to get paid. And I like the group overall. I think Marcel Harris is a box safety, and I still worry about him in coverage. I know he had a pretty good camp, but he's still somebody that I worry about on the back end in coverage. But the other three, I'm really high on. Tarvarius Moore, I'm super high on. I think that the position's looking bright and looking good. The secondary is going to be fun to watch because I think there's going to be a lot of different things than we've seen in the past scheme-wise, and guys playing different positions and really confusing some of these quarterbacks and coordinators. So this should be a fun year of defensive football for the 49ers.
It's not that surprising. To be totally honest, I wanted to see Cyprien make the team over Harris. Maybe Harris looked great in camp. Maybe he's putting it together. He's a young guy. Okay, he was a late-round pick. He's worked hard. He's made the team. This is his third year in the NFL. But last year when he was in the games, his coverage was lacking. I'm going to be totally honest. I was not very impressed with him. He tackles well. He had that great strip of Lamar Jackson, which a lot of people remember him for. But I also remember him getting burnt. Hopefully he's picked it up. I think the Niners have a good coaching staff and are good evaluators of talent. So I'm not going to sit back and say they're wrong, but I kind of wanted to see Cyprien over him.
I wouldn't say I wanted to see Cyprien over him. I think I disagree with you there. I think I wanted Marcel Harris to have a great camp and continue to improve. And by all appearances, it looks that way. I don't know how much of it, though, is Marcel Harris improving so much as Jonathan Cyprien not maybe necessarily having enough time to show what he needs to show. I think if you had given him some game reps and he had some actual preseason games, he may have played better than Cyprien in the box and in coverage, and that may have hurt Marcel Harris. I think just the circumstance-wise, you look at the actual circumstances, Marcel Harris knows the system, he knows the scheme, he knows what the coaching staff's looking for, he knows how to play with those guys in space and where he should be when certain guys are in certain responsibilities and vice versa. And Cyprien doesn't. He's played at a high level, yes, but he's played in other systems. I know he's played in a similar system in Jacksonville. He played in a similar setting, but every place there are little tweaks, there are differences, and I think Marcel Harris just had the heads up and the advantage there. It doesn't shock me that Cyprien got cut. It doesn't shock me that Marcellus Harris is there. The rest of the three guys there, Ward, Tart, and Moore, we pretty much all expected those three to for sure be there and be in the position that they're now in. So I like the safety crew. I like the group we have. Those four I'm comfortable with. Let's see what they can do this year, and hopefully they improve.
So their specialists are going to be kicker Robbie Gould, punter Mitch Wisnowski, and long snapper Kyle Nelson. I don't think anyone was surprised about special teams. I think they're a good group, and I think unless you guys have something to say about them, we'll just move right to the practice squad.
Just three of the best in the business at what they do.
Yep.
Right. The 49ers, when they made their cuts, I think a lot of us were always interested in who's going to make it to the practice squad. I don't know why it's such a big deal, but it is. Like I get excited to see who's going to be on the practice squad.
Me too.
And there was some guys I didn't expect to make it. So I'm going to run down the list, and then afterwards I'm gonna send it to you guys and let me know if anyone stuck out or anything that kind of surprised you. So they kept on the practice squad wide receiver River Craycraft, safety Jonathan Cyprien, defensive lineman Darion Daniels, offensive lineman Ronis Grasu, tight end Chase Harrell, cornerback Tim Harris Jr., running back JaMychal Hasty, fullback Josh Hokett, wide receiver Jawan Jennings, cornerback Dante Johnson, defensive lineman Dion Jordan, safety Jared Maiden, offensive lineman Dakota Shepley, offensive lineman William Sweet, linebacker Joe Walker, and wide receiver Kevin White. So, Horst, did anyone stick out to you as a surprise, or you think this is exactly what the 49ers thought was going to happen?
Well, there's a couple guys on here that I'm really excited about. As much as I joked about them, it's pretty awesome to see River Craycraft even on a practice squad. I mean, he puts up all those videos online. You can tell the guy works his butt off. He's not the most naturally gifted guy in the history of the world. So good for him. Cyprien, I'm glad they were able to keep on the practice squad because I still think if you got to a situation where who do you want to start a game, Cyprien or Harris, you'd want Cyprien. Tim Harris is another guy I still like. I still think can be a good player. JaMychal Hasty, a lot of good stuff was written about him. We're all big fans of Jawan Jennings. I mean, Dion Jordan, I thought he would make the roster, but good for him to take a practice squad nod. Then the last one I was going to say is Kevin White. His career looked dead in the water. And that's pretty cool that he showed up because what's he been on the roster? Maybe 3 weeks?
Shorter than that.
And he's shown enough to be kept around, at least in that capacity. So good for him. Maybe he turns his career around. And that's another thing, too, is sometimes those guys picked in the first round, I'm not being on no practice squad. Good for him to humble himself and take that spot because maybe this is the point where he turns his career around.
The two receivers, Craycraft and White, surprised me of making it just because of the other guys, some of the other guys that got cut. I was just surprised that they were on the practice squad, and then a guy, especially like White, took the spot and was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Good for him, finding a way to claw his way back and get himself there. Jonathan Cyprian, only because he said he wasn't going to. So that obviously wasn't accurate, or at least 100% accurate. And the reasons for that are his own, but as a 49er fan, it's good to know that we got a guy like that sitting there waiting in case something terrible happens. We got a vet who started and played a lot of games in this league and played at a high level that is ready to come in and fill roles and needs for this team going forward. Love the fact that we were able to get Hasty and Juwan Jennings onto the practice squad. The more time that they have to develop, work, learn the system, show what they can do in the system, and really hone their game and fit it to what Kyle Shanahan wants them to be able to do within his offense, the better. Love seeing Tim Harris Jr. make it down there. Love seeing Deion Jordan down there. Overall, was very happy with the product, and there were, Horst had talked about, there were on Twitter, there were a couple people before we started recording today, how people were joking that our practice squad was going to be better than a couple 53-man rosters out there. So love the talent that we got onto the practice squad. I feel comfortable knowing that if something happens to a few of the guys on the 53-man roster, we have some more than competent and capable guys who can come up and fill roles and fill needs.
Lots of balance, veterans to young players and players in key positions that can fill in, but can also emulate other players from other teams when it's time for practice. I thought those things stuck out. Anytime that you can go against good players in practice every single day, it's going to make you better. So being able to keep players like Deion Jordan that's going to compete at a high level, and Juwan Jennings wants it because he's wanting to prove that he's just a dog. And if you saw his videos on YouTube, just watch the dog. It's one of the greatest highlight videos ever. It's no joke. It's awesome. And they just kept a lot of good players, and I liked it. They got Tim Harris who can show length and stuff. I looked at it from that angle, and the fact that the veterans agreed to this. Joe Walker on there. He's a great possibility if something happens, injury-wise in your linebackers. He's a veteran that knows how to play, and he has special teams experience. So overall, it was a great group. I think the 49ers probably are happy they got every single person that's on there. It's probably exactly who they wanted. I don't think it worked out any better. The 53-man roster, I think if I had to say, is probably the best 53-man roster we've seen since Kyle and John got to San Francisco. And the practice squad is definitely the deepest I've ever seen. And I was curious how people were going to build their practice squads this year because of the new rules. And it looks pretty good. I think the 49ers have put together a solid roster, and they're definitely going to make a run at a 6th Super Bowl.
I got one question for you guys here. With that many receivers on the practice squad, if a receiver goes down, who are they bringing up?
Who gets hurt?
So are you saying it's a difference between who's inside and who's outside?
I think it does. I think if you lose a certain type of player, say Kendrick Bourne gets hurt, you might be more willing to bring up a Juwan Jennings to fill that role. But if it's somebody like a Brandon Ayuk, you might be looking at a Craycraft or Kevin White, somebody that's fast.
Yep.
So I think it depends on which player it is that gets hurt. All right, guys, chalk another one up.
Click one of these boxes on the right if you need more 49ers Cutback podcast in your life. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe and remember the right way is always the 49ers way.